Hey and welcome. This is Josh Stoney via thewhiskeyliver.com and aquavitae.com. So this is my first official podcast or video blog, or however you want to title or name it. It's episode 1. I do some blogging. My goal is to share a hobby and passion of mine with everybody out there, and so I'm going to see how it takes to video. So my first episode, what I want to focus on is actually I want to share my first installment of a whiskey club. Online, you pay so much a month. They ship you samples based on what your taste preference is, and you get to sample different whiskeys without having to buy a bottle. So I'm taking advantage of that. I'm testing it out. I want to share with you kind of my adventures with it, share my passion with it. This is my first box. It's actually been sitting around for a while, and this is the only club I'm actually part of. Online club with the boxes. You've probably seen a lot of them. Like, for example, my wife does a box where they send you clothes, and then you buy what you want and you send back what you don't want. They do it for food, and they also do it for spirits. So I'm only going to focus on one sample this time, and that's sample A here. If I pull it out, you'll notice they send 3. The distinct types of whiskeys I told them I wanted to try was bourbons and American whiskeys. So I believe all these are bourbons, and so what comes into it is you get 3 50 milliliter samples, which is 1.5 ounces or a shot. So it comes with 3 of those. It comes with the labels that you stick on there. There's kind of different ways they share how you could set this up. You could do blind sampling. You can do it with the labels and order them your most favorite to least favorite. There's just different things you can do. It also comes with, which is kind of really neat, is it kind of walks you through the different parts of tasting whiskey, which is kind of what I want to do. Obviously, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I want to do it installment by installment through my blogs and my videos. Otherwise, we'd be here for a very long time. So I actually already tasted a little bit of it. I got some of my notes, and just kind of dig into it. And so the first one is it's a bourbon. And so real quick before I talk about this company, at least what I found out about them, because I don't get the bottle, is it's a single barrel bourbon. And what makes up a bourbon, this is very important because a lot of people may not realize that, or just kind of digging into what's whiskey, what's the different types of whiskeys. Well, bourbon is a type of whiskey. What makes it up specifically is it's a distilled spirit that's made up of at least 51% corn. So it can be anywhere from 51 to 100% corn, which is the mash bill or the grains that are used. There's 4 main types of grains that are used in whiskeys. You've got corn, rye, wheat, and barley. Sometimes you hear it called as malt. So scotches are always single malts. So this is, I don't know what the exact mash bill is. I know it's at least 51% corn. I also know what I found out is a lot of times bourbon will also use some rye in it, because rye is kind of spicy and bitter, and so it offsets that sweetness of the corn. Corn is really, really sweet. But this uses an African grain called millet. I've never actually had millet. I'm not sure. From my research, millet it's sweeter as well, so I'm wondering if this is a sweet type of bourbon, and most bourbons are because of the corn. But anyway, so a bourbon is at least 51% corn. It must be aged at least 2 years in a brand new American oak barrel. So you can't use a used barrel. So bourbons are aged in an oak barrel, and then those are sold off or used for other types of whiskeys. And it has to be made within the United States. Historically, it started out as bourbons were only allowed to be made in Bourbon, Kentucky. Then that broadened up to Kentucky, and then expanded to it's made in America. So really, that's all that makes up a bourbon. So Koval is from my understanding, it's a Chicago-based distillery, and it's organic. So it means all the grains that it purchases and uses are deemed organic. So you're seeing more and more of those pop up. I don't know if it enhances the flavor at all with it, but it's always good to know that you're using organic, clean grains. So it comes in this bottle here, okay? And I've got my Glencairn glass, and those of you that are not familiar, you can really use any type of glass you want, but certain glasses are made in order to enhance certain aspects of tasting. So I use a Glencairn glass because it's shaped that way. It actually helps with the nosing and the taste. I like it, and it's traditional. So I'm just gonna pour a little bit, not all of it. I'd like to have some friends sample it too, so I'll save a little bit there. You don't need much for a tasting, so I poured it in there. We'll take a look at it, and the first thing you want to do is you kind of just, not that you judge any type of whiskey on its color. You shouldn't judge a whiskey on its color at all, but it's good to notice the color, because that might give you some understandings of how long it's aged for. So for example, this is a bourbon. I know that bourbon's going to be aged in brand new American oak, so I know that oak has a lot of vanilla tannins in it. Oak can be very powerful, and so American whiskeys and oak is much more smoky and strong than your traditional Scotch. And so if we take a look, hold it up to the light. It's a caramel color, a little bit darker, swirled around a little bit. So it's aged, at least from my understanding, no more than 4 years, this one. So we know so far that it's bourbon, so it's at least 2. From my research, it's no more than 4. So it's been aged between 2 and 4 years in an oak barrel, which most of the time is toasted, which means they take fire to inside of it, and so that charcoal inside actually helps filter it, adds the color that you see is from the charcoal, and adds a smokiness to it. So pretty good color. Swirl around a little bit. Whiskey's not like wine. If you like wine, you'll notice that wine, people have a lot of things they put on the bottle or they're swirled a lot, because chemically wine's different. As you introduce oxygen to wine, it actually really truly enhances the flavor of the wine. Whiskey's not so much like that. So really what swirling does is it helps the alcohol evaporate, and you can get opens up the aromas a little bit, but it doesn't really change it like it does wine. So swirl a little bit, and you'll notice that I do this with my nosings. Nosings is important because what you smell is important to the experience. So I learned online one time and talking to another guy, it's kind of like an experience. So when you go and nose it, don't stick your nose in there, and don't inhale as hard as you can, because obviously the alcohol fumes are gonna dull your senses. It's gonna hurt. You're not gonna be able to taste and smell as well. So you put your nose up and you take a nosing, take it away, come back a couple of times, almost like you're introducing yourself to somebody. And so I'll kind of talk it out. It sounds goofy, but it's really helped me with experiencing the nosing. So kind of what I've heard is bring it up as if you're talking to somebody. So, hello. How are you? Just fine. Thank you. So, which is great, and I've got my notes here to kind of refer to, and just like any bourbon, I think, I really get the smell of corn. You smell that sweet corn on there, and vanilla. Corn and vanilla. Almost like a caramel corn. The vanilla, obviously, from the vanilla tannins, excuse me. Almost custardy. Kind of a sweet vanilla custard. It's really soft and slight. It's not overpowering whatsoever. I've had whiskeys before. You go up to smell it, and it's so strong and powerful it just singes. So sweet, crisp, clean. So you look at the body, you nose it, and it's that experience. What do you first get from it? There's 32 major aromas that you start to sense, and by no means am I an expert with my palate or my nosings. In fact, I was very intimidated when I first started drinking, listening to everybody break down all these different flavors and smells and be like, I can't smell that. Well, over time, I've actually developed that palate, and it's become more aware. It's actually helped a lot of aspects of my cooking and eating. And every time, it's just something a little bit different. So the next thing we'll do is we're gonna go to taste it. You might have heard the term whiskey yoga before. It's kind of, don't just drink the whiskey. When you sip the whiskey and you inhale, make sure you exhale. It allows the alcohol fumes to come out. Let it sit on the tongue a little bit. You know, let it sit there for a few seconds, and then before you swallow, to really let the saliva break it down and break out the flavors in the whiskey. And also it dilutes it a little bit so it's not as strong and burns the throat. So we'll try it. Not bad. Not bad at all. It's very balanced and smooth on the very front. Again, you get that very sweet on the front. You get that corn and vanilla. It's almost fruit, like a little bit of herbal in it. And then what happens is, as you drink it, what happens is that flavor, it lingers. It holds there on the back of the tongue for a little bit longer. And then you get that peppery flavors from the alcohol in the wood. So very sweet and herbally on the front, vanilla, corn, and then you get that bite from the alcohol on the back end. Not overpowering by any means, but you do get it on the back end. So get a rush of cereal notes. That corn, a little bit of wheat has got to be in there. That millet is very different. You get that smoky from the charcoal. Remember I was talking about the charcoal? That gives it a little bit of smoke. Not overpowering like a peated Scotch whiskey that's really smoky like a campfire, but you get a little bit of that. On the back end, it's fruity. Apricots. You get that kind of apricot peach on the back end, some baking spices, cinnamon, and tobacco. So, you know, for bourbon, it's actually fairly complex, not bad. So I was doing a little more research on it, just kind of digging in. It's about $50 a bottle. You know, it's not gonna drain the bank. I wouldn't say it's anything that I would spend a lot of money on, but by no means is it just your general Buffalo Trace or general bourbon that you would buy $20-$30 range. You know, for $50 bottle, I would probably buy this bottle and keep it around. The real complex part of it I like is the millet. Usually I have a lot of, the bourbons I really like are the ones that uses rye, like 21% rye in that to give it a spiciness. This is different. It's not spicy, but it balances it out in a different way than just a 100% corn bourbon that's just sweet from front to end and just has got a super strong bite on it. You know, I could sip this. I mean, I could use it in a cocktail. I could definitely see that, but with the notes I'm tasting, I'd use this as a sipper. So, you know, all in all, it's a pretty good bourbon. I'd give it a score of 86 out of 100 on my malt marker. Even though it's not malt. 3 out of 4 stars, you know, for the price. You know, it's not bad. But the best part of it is not that, hey, I just came across this awesome, fantastic whiskey. Now I'm gonna just buy and keep. It's kind of the experience, and really the best thing, even though I'm doing this as a video, is the thing I do like about whiskey clubs like this or drinking whiskey is when you get people together, it's more the social aspect, because the next person next to me is not going to taste the exact same thing. So it's not bad. So I hope you found this informational. I hope it wasn't too long-winded. I hope to continue. My next one, I'd like to start breaking down the next samples. So I did Koval, the first one. The next one looks like the next ones are, it's called Flaviur. It's a bourbon whiskey, which is not a bourbon. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then I have a Journeyman, which says it's a featherbone bourbon. Not sure what that means about featherbone bourbon, but we'll dig into that a little bit. So please, again, I hope you found this informational. If you follow aquavitae.com or thewhiskeylover.com, please share this. If not, please link to my site, follow my blogs, give me some feedback. Let me know some of the great things you're tasting. I'd love to share it on my blog. So again, Josh Stoney with thewhiskeylover.com, aquavitae.com. Have a great